Hi, everybody. I'm here today to talk about eagles and DDT. DDT is something you probably never heard of before, but I hope you've heard of eagles. All right. We're going to talk today about this example because it's an interesting example of how humans have had both a positive effect on a population of living things out in nature and how we've had a negative effect on that. So often we think of humans in terms of, making populations go down, causing extinctions, which we are doing, and that's kind of depressing to think about a lot. But I like this story because it's the story of us making a mistake that almost made eagles go extinct. There was a time back in the 1970s where eagles could have gone extinct. The good news is we figured out what we were doing to harm eagles. We stopped doing that, and then the eagle populations have come back up really well in the last 40 years or so. Actually, it's 40, 50 years now. So I want to tell you a little bit today about eagles and what we were doing with eagles and a little bit about eagles. So first of all, eagles are pretty fascinating. This isn't the best picture. It's the best one I could find on the internet, you guys. Anyway, eagles are fascinating creatures. Eagles are in the raptor family. We have a lot of eagles in the St. Francis area. If you're paying attention and you live in St. Francis, Oak Grove, East Bethel, Now Then, what are our other towns? Ham Lake. You will see eagles flying around all over the St. Francis area. They like to live by water. Their main source of prey is fish. So they like to live by open water in particular, where there's water all year round for them. They stay here year round. They have a streamlined body shape. This is common in a lot of birds of prey. They have very good eyesight. They have their hook-like beak that they're going to use to tear their prey apart. They have powerful wings. Their feathers are really interesting too. Their feathers the feather structure kind of locks together and basically gives them a weatherproof raincoat on the outside of them. I'll show you in a minute a webcam of eagles, and the eagles are kind of in their nest and they're getting snowed on and rained on, and they don't care because their feathers protect them from all of that. They have powerful talons that are very, very sharp, that are used for grabbing prey and things like that. So these are some of their adaptations. Adaptations are changes that help a living thing survive, that make them what we call a bird of prey, or in this case, the hooked beak and the talons are what put them in what we call the raptor group of living things. All right. So eagles are really interesting. In the spring, I'm hoping Mr. Douglas and I can be showing you webcams of eaglets or eagle nests here in Minnesota. If you go to YouTube and you search for Decorah eagles, this is an eagle nest that's been going on for almost 20 years now. They've had a webcam on it down in Decorah, Iowa, and they focused on the same nesting pair of eagles. And they come back to the same nest every year. So it's kind of interesting. I'll just hit if this will play a little bit. Really need the sound in here. But if you can kind of see here, it's kind of interesting. They have the webcam, and then somebody has recorded a whole bunch of this webcam footage over the years, and so you can find it on the internet. Here's a parent that just brought back a fish. So in the spring, we'll be able to show you this. We'll be able to watch this year's current nest or another nest if we can find a webcam that works. Different years, different things are going on. And what's interesting here, this is a little video of the parent feeding the baby. So you see, aren't they adorable? Oh, this is an eaglet, 3 baby eagles. Eagles will usually have 2 to 3 eggs in their nest. This particular nest in Decorah has successfully hatched and raised and fledged is birds leaving the nest, about 3 eaglets per year. And so they're these cute little fuzzy gray fuzzballs here. However, these eaglets have a tremendous demand for food. And so raising baby eagles is definitely a 2-parent job, kind of a sad thing about nature. If one of the parents dies, the other parent will just abandon the nest because they have no hope of successfully raising the children by themselves. I don't know if you can see here their ginormous feet. Isn't this little baby? Oh my gosh. He's trying to move, but his head's flopping around because he or she, I'll say it, is not strong enough. These big, gigantic feet here. Again, if you want to see more eagle footage, you can go to the Decorah Eagles channel on YouTube, and there's all kinds of footage of the parents feeding the babies, and it's just kind of fascinating. They also have like a night vision camera on the nest, and again, people get very concerned about the eagles because they kind of get invested if you watch the webcam a lot, and they're concerned for the eagles if it's raining or snowing. But again, the eagles, They don't care. They have a really good, the parents anyway, have that really good feather system that protects them. The babies, even at this age, one parent will generally stay on the nest and protect the babies, and actually sit on top of them to cover them. So it's kind of fascinating. I've even learned a lot from watching the eagle nest. In just a couple short months, these little baby eagles will be as big as their parents. This is crazy to me. This is video from 3 years ago. Here's some of the night vision. Here's what those babies look like just a couple months later. So in Minnesota, lots of bald eagles will lay their eggs in February, and then they'll hatch sometime in March. And so usually March sometime we can start showing you webcam footage from this year. And then by the time we're done with school in the beginning of June, you will see babies that look like this. They literally go from being just these teeny little fluff balls to being the size of their parents in a few months. You can see why they need a lot of food to be able to grow. These are those same babies just a few months later. Eventually, they will fledge the nest. You'll see them do little winger. Do you like my actions here? They'll do little winger sizes to try to practice their wings. And then eventually they start making short trips away from the nest. And then eventually one day they just leave the nest and don't come back. They have been able to band all of the eaglets in the Decorah nest. And so they can actually put little location trackers on them. So if you Google Decorah eagle nest, they have data for all of the eaglets for the last 10 years or so, and their locations, and they've been tracking how long they survive and what happens to them and where they travel. They mostly stay along the Mississippi River in Iowa, but they'll generally kind of travel several hundred miles north and south every year, but they stay in the Midwest for the whole year, which is, I think, kind of interesting. So again, you want to see more eagle footage, go to Decorah Eagles. It's kind of a fun thing to look at. All right. I can't get to my next slide here. Okay. Eagles mate for life, and they will return to the same nest each year, which I think is interesting. And once again, it takes both parents to care for the babies. Their nests can get to be very large, so much so. What they'll do is they'll do some nestorations every year. They'll come back and kind of fix up their nest. But then they tend to use the same one every year. If the nest gets damaged or if the nest is no good anymore, then they will move to a different nest. So kind of interesting to look at their nests and to learn more about that too. So eagles, we have a great eagle population in the St. Francis area right now. However, it was not always like that. So let me go into the bad part of the story about eagles here right now. Back in the I believe it was the 1940s and 50s and 60s, humans discovered this great chemical. It has a really long chemical name I can't even pronounce, so we shorten it and just call it DDT. It has this chemical called an insecticide, and insecticides kill bugs. They kill little creepy, crawly creatures. And we thought it was this fabulous thing because it killed the bugs, but it didn't seem to have any effect on humans or anything else. And so we just sprayed it everywhere. Literally, this gives me the heebie-jeebies right now. They would spray it on beaches so you could go to the beach without having bugs crawl all over you, and people would like run through the spray. I mean, and so we just sprayed it everywhere. Farmers, of course, we always have insect pests with livestock and crops. They would literally hire airplanes to just broadcast spray this chemical all over, all over their fields and livestock. We just sprayed it everywhere, and we thought it was great. The problem was this chemical has a couple things. Most other chemicals that you spray in the environment, they break down into other things over time. They break down into harmless things. Sunlight breaks them down. DDT isn't like that. Once it's out there, it doesn't break down. It doesn't go away until you physically move it. And so what we ended up seeing is we were seeing eagle populations go down. And after a bunch of research, we saw the populations going down and people didn't know what was going on. And so we had to research it. We had to dig into the problem. It took years to figure out what was going on with the eagles. So what we found out is that DDT doesn't break down in the environment. So what happens is you get a small amount of DDT in the water, right? And then the stuff that lives in the water, little zooplankton, little microscopic things, and the little fish, they're absorbing DDT into their body. And so there's just a little bit there. It's not really harming them. It is no ill effects. It's not hard on them at all. But then as you go up the food chain, you get a larger amount of DDT. What we're finding is the DDT, once it gets into the bodies of the fish and these little animals and things, it never goes away. It permanently stays in their body. It's actually stored, we found out, in the fat tissues of most larger animals. And so you have this larger fish then that eats the smaller fish, and it's getting all of the DDT that was in these smaller fish, gets into the larger fish. And of course, then the larger fish is eaten by one of your top predators here. So the top predator ends up, this yellow stuff shows the amount of DDT. This yellow, by the time you get to the top predator, it's just getting a ton of DDT. And that DDT keeps building up and building up and building up in the top predator's body because it's never broken down. And so that is the issue that we had with DDT. So what's happening though is it did not kill adult eagles or birds outright. It didn't poison them outright. But what it did, kind of a weird blood chemistry thing, is it made it so the adult female eagles could not put calcium into their eggshells. And calcium, of course, is what gives an eggshell its strength. So if eagles could not put could not put calcium into their eggshells, what you end up with are these weakened eggshells here, and the parents have to sit on them to incubate them. So there's no hope for these babies to survive. And so what you had were eagle eggs that were getting crushed before they had a chance to hatch. And so therefore you have the hatch rate, or the birth rate, if you will, lower than the death rate. And so the population was actually shrinking. So we were literally poisoning our national bird. We were poisoning it so it couldn't put calcium in its eggshells. And eagle populations were so harmed by this that they almost went extinct. They were on the endangered species list for quite some time, and they almost go extinct. Their populations are going down and down and down and down. So much so that if you had gotten on a magic bus, okay, let's pretend we have a magic bus that can drive every road in the state of Minnesota within an hour. I don't know, it's a magic bus. You probably, if you had driven all around the state of Minnesota in my magic bus for an hour, maybe you would have seen one eagle back in 1970. There weren't very many of them around. However, if you took that same magic bus trip today, you would see hundreds and hundreds of eagles. Their populations today have come back. And the reason the populations have come back is that DDT was banned in 1972 in the United States and many other countries. There are a few countries that still use it, particularly countries that have really bad malaria problems, because the DDT kills mosquitoes that cause malaria, and malaria is a really nasty disease that kills a lot of people still in the world every day. But most countries banned its use in 1972. So what we see after 1972 is the DDT that's already in the environment is going to kind of spread out and move around more. And the animals that have the DDT in their body are going to die and get replaced by ones that don't have the DDT in their body. So eventually we see eagle populations rebounding. And this is up until the last year where they quit counting. This is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Administration, I don't know what it's called. They did surveys of how many nesting pairs of eagles we had in the United States. This is in all of the lower 48 states. There was only 487 eagle nests that they counted back in 1963. In 2006, we had over 9,000. And I have looked all over the internet once again for data. I can't find data on this for 2020, but 14 years later, my guess is this is all doubled. It is amazing. I went to college in Winona back in the mid 90s. Winona is right on the Mississippi River. And when I would drive from Winona to the Twin Cities area, I would maybe see 5 or 6 eagles. When you make that trip today, especially in the spring, you will see hundreds. I quit counting when I made that trip a couple months ago at 110 eagles. So we have a great eagle population. Actually, we have the second highest eagle population here in Minnesota. Alaska is the only other state that has more eagles than Minnesota does. So this is nesting pairs in the United States. And we can see once we ban DDT here, which that happened right about here, we see that our nesting and our populations have recovered. All right. Minnesota has a ton of eagles. As I said, we are number 2 in the nation in the United States for nesting pairs of eagles. And again, back in the 1970s, we would have only seen maybe 100 eagle nests in the whole state. I'm guessing this is the data, the last collected data was from 2005. I'm guessing it's in the thousands in 2020. Like there's a noticeable amount. I grew up in southwestern Minnesota. I didn't see an eagle my whole life growing up out there. When I go out there now, even in southwestern Minnesota, which is all prairie, not really great eagle habitat, I see eagles all over Minnesota right now. So their population, we can see the line going up. Their population has really recovered. This is active eagle nests by county, 2005, the last year they collected data, and we can see this would be right along the Minnesota River. This would be the Mississippi River right here, and this would be where we have all of our big lakes in Minnesota, and of course our border lakes, our boundary waters area here. So you can see that eagle nests like to be where the water is because, again, the fish are their main source of prey. So we have a really good eagle situation in Minnesota. To sum up and to finish this up, first, humans had a negative effect on eagle populations. We spray DDT, which weakened their eggshells, so their hatch rate was lower than their death rate, so their population went down. Then we banned the DDT, and then eagle populations recovered because their eggshells were no longer getting broken. So much so that now some people actually kind of consider eagles pests. I've heard people in the St. Francis area complaining that they have too many eagles around, and they're noisy and all that kind of stuff. So they're kind of a success story. Look at all these babies, aren't they cute? Kind of a success story of us harming a population, but then fixing our mistake, and so the population came back again. That's it. Have a great day. Thanks for listening. Bye.